Cinnamon rolls this good shouldn't even be possible, and yet, here we are. As a first step, we need to bloom our yeast. Right here, I have some active dry yeast, which I'm going to combine with some warm milk. Give it a quick whisk, and then let that sit for 10 minutes to make sure it foams up and is alive, just like this one here. Next, grab the bowl of your stand mixer and add in your flour, sugar, and salt, which we're going to quickly whisk before locking back into the stand mixer. Next, we'll combine a couple eggs as well as our yeast mixture into a bowl. Whoa! It made a perfect X. And then whisk this up until fully combined. Now we'll add our egg mixture into our flour mixture and then mix on medium until everything has formed into a dough, scraping down the sides of your bowl with a rubber spatula as needed. When it's done, it'll look something like this. Not the best looking dough yet, but remember, we still have to add the best part, the butter. We'll bring our mixer back up to medium speed and add in our room temperature butter, just 1 or 2 cubes at a time until each is fully incorporated, repeating this process until we've added all of it. Oh, and if you're not good at basketball, don't even try throwing your butter from a distance like I did. It's just going to make you look bad. The whole process of adding the butter will probably take you somewhere between 5 and 7 minutes. Once you can see in the dough that all that butter has been fully incorporated, we'll increase the mixer speed to 6 and let it mix until something called window panes start to form. It can be a little boring sitting there and waiting for your dough to mix, but if you listen carefully, you can often hear this really cool beat or rhythm in the dough. It sounds crazy, but for me, it helps to pass the time a lot faster.
Oh, I have to stand like this so you can hear it.
You're probably wondering, what are window panes? Well, if you take your dough and then stretch it out, you can eventually start to see light through it without the dough breaking, like a window. And that's when you know you're ready to move on. Butter the inside of a glass bowl all over to make sure your dough can't stick. Then do your best to shape your dough into a nice ball and drop it in it. Cover this up in plastic wrap and let it rest at room temperature for 1.5 to 2 hours or until it's doubled in size. After it's risen, remove the plastic wrap and punch down your dough. Give it a few more punches to help release some of that air, then add back on your plastic wrap and place it in the fridge overnight. While our dough's in the fridge, sleeping and developing all kinds of flavor, we're going to make our filling. And that all starts with making my favorite, some brown butter. Making brown butter is easy. All you do is melt some butter down in a pot or pan and then stir constantly over medium heat, scraping down the sides of the pan until lots and lots of bubbles, and then eventually a buttery foam begins to form. And a few seconds after that, the second you start seeing nice golden brown color, pour it out of the pan and off the heat into a room temperature bowl immediately. And in just seconds, you've got perfect brown butter. It's one of the single best ingredients you can use in the kitchen. Making brown butter is the first technique I can remember my grandmother teaching me when I was a kid trying to learn to cook. And ever since then, it's one of my favorites. With that brown butter, I'm going to add some cinnamon, some honey, a little fresh ground nutmeg, some salt, and some light brown sugar. And you'll want to let this sit and come to room temperature. But as always, I'm not going to make you wait. Fit your mixing bowl back into your stand mixer with a whisk attachment, and then mix on medium speed until you get a frosting-like consistency that's doubled in size and lighter in color. You'll probably have to stop your mixer at some point during mixing and scrape off the bottom just to make sure everything gets fully incorporated as well. Otherwise, look at all those chunks of flavor we would have missed out on. This is going to be a real problem because I'm going to eat all of it before we move on to the next step. Once your mixture looks something like this, crack in 1 egg and mix on medium-high until fully incorporated. It's good that the egg's in there now because it'll make me stop eating so much of it. After doing that second mix with the egg, it'll start to look a lot like a frosting, at which point we can let it go rest at room temperature while we bring back in our happy and well-rested dough. Flour your work surface as well as the top of the dough, then use a rolling pin and really whatever method you want to roll it into a 12 by 16 inch rectangle. A few fun facts about cinnamon rolls while I roll this out. First, cinnamon rolls were invented by accident. And second, cinnamon was once more valuable than gold, so the early cinnamon rolls would have been pretty fancy. Once you're happy with your rectangle, dust off any remaining flour, and then bring back in that filling from earlier and put it right down into the center. Spread the filling across your dough in a nice even layer and try to have fun with this step. It's a beautifully satisfying part of the cinnamon roll making process. This step here makes me feel like some kind of painter, or I could do it for hours without getting bored. Make sure you leave 1 strip of dough on the area closest to you with no frosting, about a ½ inch or inch in length. To roll it into an actual cinnamon roll, I'll start by folding in the part closest to me and then just roll it as cleanly and evenly into a log as you can. I know it's in an awkward spot on my cutting board here, but I'm not going to move it yet. First, I'm going to trim off the ends because unless you were able to roll your dough flat into a truly perfect rectangle earlier, the ends will always look uneven like this. Once I've trimmed both of the ends, I'll roll it onto some parchment paper, roll it up nice and tight in plastic wrap, and then place this carefully in the freezer for at least 20 minutes. Well, okay. Too many dino nuggets. Luckily, like always, I've already got one cold, so you don't have to wait. We're almost there. Remove the plastic wrap and parchment paper from your cinnamon roll, and then using the sharpest, thinnest knife you have, cut through the center. Hopefully, you've got a cross-section that looks just as good as this one. And from there, cut them into 10 of the most even pieces you can possibly get. Beautiful. That's perfect. And look, I got a little snack. Remember also that the more evenly you cut them, the more evenly they're going to cook in the oven. Now, spray your baking dish with cooking spray, then add in a piece of parchment paper, and spread out all your cinnamon rolls, giving them as much space possible between each other. Just pretend they don't like each other. Cover these up with plastic wrap and let them proof at room temperature for 1.5 hours or until they've doubled in size. Now we're going to put 1 spoonful of heavy cream on each of the risen cinnamon rolls. We do this because the cream seeps into the dough as it bakes and keeps the bottoms extra soft, which gives you that beautiful bakery level texture. It's sort of similar to how you baste your turkey or soak your French toast in custard. The only reason you'd ever skip this step is if you wanted to eat a dry cinnamon roll. These are finally ready to go into the oven to bake. Pull them out once they've hit an internal temperature of 185 to 190 degrees Fahrenheit, and then let them cool for at least 30 minutes. As tempting as it might be to eat them right now. And if you ever do get tempted, just remember we still have to make our frosting. But even before that, we're going to make a quick topping that is an absolute cinnamon roll game changer. And I promise, we're going to finish this and the frosting before they're cooled down anyway, so this works out perfectly. Here we're making candied walnuts, where you melt down a bit of butter with some brown sugar as well as a tiny pinch of salt. All we're doing here is throwing together a quick, simple caramel over medium-low heat. And the reason I think this is such an important part of the cinnamon roll recipe is because it creates this amazing crunchy texture that balances out against that soft gooiness of the cinnamon rolls. Once you're happy with the color and consistency of your caramel, toss in your walnuts or any nut of your choice and mix fully until they're evenly coated. Then place them on a parchment-lined baking sheet, and remember, if you get any clumps like this, don't worry, because you can always crush this up more later. My special finishing touch on these is a little bit of lemon zest. That little touch of acidity will also help to balance out your cinnamon rolls. To make our frosting, we'll add a block of cream cheese, then some room temperature butter, and then beat this with a paddle attachment for about a minute or until light and fluffy. Once it looks something like this, add in your powdered sugar and continue to mix until that's fully incorporated too, scraping down the sides of your mixing bowl as needed. Finally, we'll add in some milk, cream, vanilla extract, and lemon juice, and then mix this once more until everything is fully combined, once again using that spatula to scrape down the sides of the bowl if you need to. It's time. First order of business, no grandma, no rules. I never used to be allowed to do that. Real quick, I'm just going to do a rough chop of all the candied walnuts. I personally prefer if there's a good mix of some larger chunks and some small ones. And after all the waiting, it's time to put on our frosting. My method here is to start by putting a nice dollop of frosting on each one, just to make sure I treat them all the same. And then I'll use my offset spatula to push some of that frosting around so I can actually see those spirals. You need to be able to see those after spending so much time making them. To finish, I'll sprinkle on my beautiful candied nuts. Because in my opinion, the cinnamon rolls just aren't complete without them. Let's see how we did here. The test of a good cinnamon roll. Ooh. See if you can tell how well we did by my face. I could easily eat the whole tray, but then someone would have to roll me out of here.